Oh, okay.
It should be starting now.
I just, a quick technicality, because there's no audio coming from my computer, it's not going to record audio. Or this isn't connected.
It will.
It will? Okay.
The room is wired as for the mic.
Okay. Okay, shall we start? Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Government Transition Advisory Committee. Today is Wednesday, September 20th, and we'll be here from 6 to 8 p.m. tonight. For committee members and community members listening in, welcome to the 10th meeting of the Government Transition Advisory Committee. My name is June Reyes, and I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the Transition Engagement Coordinator. And Julia is on vacation, otherwise she would be with us today. And our co-chairs are Jose and Leah, who will facilitate tonight's meeting. Next slide, please. I'm going to take a moment to go over some meeting logistics before we get started. This is a hybrid meeting, and it's being recorded for later viewing. And so you can find this recording on the City Transitions webpage under past meeting and events. Today, we also have closed captioning, ASL, and Spanish interpretation. To access Spanish interpretation, please click on the globe icon at the bottom right of your screen and select Spanish. To access closed captioning, click on the CC button on the bottom right of your screen. Committee members, if you can please change your chat settings to everyone so folks listening today can follow along. And just a reminder, the meeting chat is part of the public record. For community members listening in, we have the Zoom Q&A feature available, so feel free to submit questions or comments through there. We may not be able to answer all your questions today, but they will become part of the public record. And so today we will be taking verbal public comment, and you can also submit written public comment through our online comment form. You can also call 311, or you can email transition@portlandoregon.gov. All right, with that, I'm going to pass it to Jose to review the agenda.
Thank you. Before we start, I just wanted to give a quick welcome to everyone, and thank you for your opportunity to be co-chair since I wasn't here at the last meeting. I want to say really how appreciative I am for everything everyone's putting in and all the work that everyone has been doing for the betterment of our city. And I know that recently we've had clarification with the scope of our work, and some of our areas of expertise are not in our purview anymore, but just know that everyone brings so much to the table. I've been so taken aback by how smart and how great the comments and feedback had been on everything, that I don't want us to think that we are just our areas of expertise. I think we all bring a lot to the table, and I'm really glad of the group that they put together. I think we can do a lot, even if they've limited our scope. So I just wanted to say that before we get started. Again, thank you. I'm just really glad to be in such good company. Okay, now to the agenda. First, we'll spend 10 minutes on committee business, following by consideration of the subcommittee proposal. Then we will take some public comment. We have some time held for your question, comments, and advice related to the August 2023 transition status update and community engagement status update. Then we will do a round robin on the city organization. We will spend the remainder of the meeting learning about providing feedback on the city's approach to change management and employee engagement. And before we adjourn the meeting today, we'll close with a brief review of what our next steps will be. Next slide, please. Also, moving forward, we're going to create a space for any committee member announcements that you may want to give. So if you have an announcement you'd like to make, just please email the co-chairs before the meeting, and we'll put it, we'll make time for someone to make announcements. Because we've had a few requests for that. Fred, Jane, and David are unable to attend tonight's meeting. Otherwise, everyone should be here. Our first order of business is really to approve the September 26th meeting summary. Hopefully we're all able to see it. Now I entertain a motion to approve the summary. To approve. Second? Okay, any opposition?
Who approved? Sorry, who was the second?
Lori, and who seconded?
Second.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any opposition? So seeing none, I'd say this passes. Next slide, please. Okay, as always, our final order of committee business is to review the working agreements. The working agreements state as follows: in discussions, challenge ideas rather than individuals and offer constructive suggestions. Approach different opinions with curiosity and seek to understand. Keep the needs and concerns of the local community and the larger region at the forefront of the work. Arrive on time and be prepared to the best of your abilities. Let the group know if you're unable to attend a meeting. And the co-chairs will aim to incorporate tools for breathing and for breathers. Keep multitasking to a minimum. Keep focus on the objectives of the meetings. Utilize the co-chairs to know additional topics for discussions by submitting topics and writing via email, which everyone's very good at. Next slide, please. Honor the decisions of the group. Contribute to the overall success of the group by finding ways to participate that best meets your needs. Step up and step back. Collectively work to ensure that every member who wants to be heard is heard. And just a note about that, that may look like Leah and I calling people out of order. If we see some people raising their hand that haven't gotten a chance to speak, we might call them before someone else. So just to give you a heads up about that. Embrace conflict and work with your fellow committee members and staff to find ways to give each other feedback. We'll try to incorporate various feedback tools. Use I statements. I'll now pass it to Leah for the subcommittee comments.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. My name's Leah Benson. I use she and they pronouns. It's good to see you all in real life and virtually again. Today we get to talk about subcommittees. Exciting. It is exciting, actually. We've been talking about it for a bit now, and hopefully we'll be able to move forward with them today. The goal is, by the end of today's discussion, we hope to advance a proposal that results in the creation of subcommittees that will enable us to work in a more focused and hopefully more impactful way. So I'm going to go through this and give an overview of the purpose of the subcommittees, offer some proposals for the initial subcommittees, and talk about how they might operate as a part of GTAC more broadly. One thing I want to note with this is that at the end of this presentation, there will be plenty of time to provide feedback. So hold your questions until the end. And also, there's been a request from some committee members to try to limit the amount that we're using chat to have conversation as presentations are happening, as it's hard to track both what people are saying and what people are typing. So just keep that in mind as you start to share. Okay, next slide, please. Great. Okay, so let's go over what subcommittees are. Okay, subcommittees can provide full committee a space for dedicated, topic-focused work for the purpose of fostering dialogue and early engagement by gathering key information and providing feedback to the transition staff. As a reminder, we're having this conversation because there has been widespread interest in this group in getting to work and diving into the specifics more deeply. We are proposing the formation of subcommittees that are focused on the key topics that GTAC members have indicated interest in through both the subcommittee survey and through the one-on-ones that we each did with June. The proposed subcommittees are also within the GTAC scope that was outlined by the mayor and council's recent letter to our committee. A quick note about why we're suggesting subcommittees over work groups at this time. Subcommittees, the difference is they are ongoing. They could last the entire tenure of this committee should we want them to, whereas work groups are time limited. The two committees that subcommittees will be proposing are ones that have ongoing work that will last the duration of what we do. So for today's discussion, we're first going to talk about proposals on the initial subcommittees we hope to form and how these subcommittees will operate. Next slide, please. Thank you. After looking at the subcommittee survey, notes from the one-on-ones, and feedback that many of you provided in the past couple of weeks, we are proposing to form 2 initial subcommittees, as they were the 2 top identified topics for committees within GTAC's scope. 1, voter and candidate education and outreach. In this subcommittee, members would work with city staff and contractors to educate and engage the public on the transition to ranked choice voting and candidate education. This committee would primarily focus on pre-election education, so getting people prepared with what they need to know in order to vote in elected officials in our new form of government. This is something that we need to get to work on pretty quickly, and will continue to be a going concern through the rest of our time as the committee. To do this, it would mean working closely with city staff and with pre-selected contractors for the city. The second committee we are proposing is districts and council operations. In this subcommittee, members would advise in educating the community about the process and outcomes of the districting process and the role of future council districts and facilities, and advise on recommendations for future council. So there's a lot going on in here. One way to think about this is, whereas the other subcommittee aims to focus on getting people ready for the election, this is getting the city ready once people are elected, making sure that people know how they will interact with their districts, and that we have some rules in place for council, and that we're providing feedback on those. Why these 2 subcommittees? First and foremost, they are timely. It's work that needs to start doing now. Second, they are broad and encompass a great deal of different facets of the work, and so they allow flexibility for people within them. Third, they speak to the needs and requests that we've heard from the general public. Fourth, they represent ongoing work. Again, there will be space to develop work groups for specific topics, or to meet in smaller groups with transition staff to provide targeted feedback, as happened with Code 3.02. Moving forward, at any time, committee members can propose that we form a work group on different topics. These 2 buckets of work represent work that will likely continue throughout our tenure as a committee. And finally, these 2 were far and away above and beyond the top 2 things that people voiced wanting to focus on in subcommittees. And the reason we are suggesting just 2 is, although we want to meet and dive into things as much as possible, we do recognize that these take time for staffing and resources, and we want to make sure that we're using efficient use of people's time, including our own. Other potential subcommittee topics that GTAC members have surfaced are change management, budgeting, communications, community engagement, and city administrator recruitment. These could be future subcommittees we decide to move forward with, or time-limited working groups. For example, the conversation about city administrator recruitment is a big one. And however, it's not quite timely yet for us to begin talking about it, as that work will not begin in earnest until 2024. But we could always move forward with that as a future subcommittee. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, talking about operations then. How subcommittees operate and contribute to advancing GTAC's work is important. In this proposal, subcommittee members would meet monthly for 2 hours, be expected to attend all meetings, be expected to draft a charter detailing its scope of work, and as needed, complete assigned work by GTAC, such as research, monitoring media, and answering questions. Please note that this will mean that we would scale back to full GTAC meetings monthly, again, to accommodate for the time of staff, but also our own time. In terms of membership, all GTAC voting and alternate members may join either, both, or neither of the committees. People are welcome to participate in whatever ways make sense to them, in the subcommittees. We also propose that each subcommittee will have a chairperson who will set subcommittee agendas and report back to GTAC during our meetings as needed. Finally, we propose that we apply the exact same decision-making practices that we use in GTAC as outlined in our bylaws to these subcommittees. Okay, so lots of information there, and I'm curious for people's feedback on it. To do this, I want to hear from as many folks as possible. And so at this point, I want to get a temperature check on how folks are feeling about these subcommittee proposals. And to do that, I'm going to take a step back and just remind us that as a committee in our bylaws, we did decide that we're using modified consensus decision-making, meaning that our goal is for everyone to agree on a plan of action ultimately. And so we're going to have a discussion. I'm going to get a temperature check to see how things are going. And at the end of it, we will vote as required by our bylaws. But the goal is that we're going to try to ensure that all perspectives are considered and that we are making a decision that everyone can get behind. Okay, so in terms of what a temperature check will look like, I'm going to introduce something a little bit different. So I'm going to ask people, if you don't already, to turn your cameras on, just briefly. You can turn them off afterwards. So what we're going to do is just a simple check-in using our thumbs. So I'm going to walk you through what that looks like. Thumbs up. Okay. What thumbs up means is, wow, this proposal is great. I'm for it, 100%. Other option, thumb to the side. What that means is I'm willing to move forward with this proposal if the group wants to. I have no major concerns, but it's not quite where I want it to be. Thumbs down is saying, I'm not behind this and I need to discuss this more before being able to move forward. This is going to help me figure out how to facilitate the conversation moving forward and make sure that there's enough space for people to express their opinions. So real quick, again, we have thumbs up, thumbs to the side, and thumbs down for options. So could everyone please just throw up your thumb for where you're feeling about this proposal? Make sure it's on the screen so I can see. Amy Wood, could you raise your thumb up a little bit? I'm not sure. Great, thank you so much. Just want to make sure. And Juanita, you're off screen right now. I want to make sure I'm tracking with you. If you have a hand.
I'm trying to get on, but having a little integrated.
Okay, want to give me a verbal? Are you thumbs up to
Yes,
the side?
time up, thumbs up.
Okay, great. Thank you so
Yes.
much. You can all put
I'm
your
going
thumbs
to
down
keep
now.
working on this thing.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. Okay.
Thank you.
Great. So one thing I want to call out, in looking through, we had a mixture of thumbs up and thumbs to the side. In terms of consensus decision-making, if we were to just move forward now, that's actually what consensus looks like. It doesn't look like everyone agreeing 100% on all things. It means the group deciding we're willing to move forward together. However, we have time set aside, and I want to make sure that all perspectives are going to be heard. So at this point, I want to open it up for comments and questions on the plan and hear your thoughts on it. So I'm going to ask if people could raise your hands now if you'd like to offer some feedback on the subcommittee proposals.
Would you like me to stop screen sharing for this portion? The discussion.
That'd be great. Yeah.
And then just to note, there was a technological issue. Everyone, the host and panelists should be able to see everyone in the chat. And please set your chat to everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, great. And Nicole, would you be willing to set the timer? And we're going to start it at 90 seconds per person. And then we can always give more time to people too. Okay. So for this, I'm just going to go in order of how I see the hands. Nicole, let me know when you're ready. Cool. All right. Zach, you're up first.
Thanks, Leah. Can you hear me okay?
Mhm.
Okay. Sorry, I am not there in person. I am there in spirit. But I want to just start by acknowledging these changes that are being implemented. I appreciate that very much. And I want to explain, I guess abstained in a way with my vote because I am curious to get a little bit more information on what I heard and maybe misinterpreted, scaling back our GTAC all committee meetings down to once a month and what that might entail for our opportunities to share across the different subcommittees and or learn together as a group.
Thank you. I'm going to write down questions as they come, and then we'll get to them after everyone speaks.
Thanks.
Juliet?
So I saw on the slide that there's no maximum number of committee members for a subcommittee. Is there a minimum number at which it's actually worth dedicating staff time and our time to, what looks like a fair amount of work?
Thank you for the question. Amy Randall.
Yeah, I have a similar question with Zach about scaling back our full group meetings. That limits, just expressing that it limits time for public comment as that heats up. It gives people less opportunity to use this as a forum. And it also limits the opportunity for staff to share out in this public forum in ways that they've been able to use our meetings as a way to share information. And also, this is the only channel that we have to speak all together as a group. It seems unfortunate to limit that, even if we scaled it back, like one is in person, one is virtual or something. To have one meeting a month and no way to broadcast to the group feels like a very difficult situation to put ourselves in once things get more intense.
Thank you. Lori.
Similar as Zach and Amy is about the scaling back. I had hoped that these could perhaps be working groups instead, where we help set strategy and deep dive with some initial questions like we've done on some other topics, and then move it back into the big committee. Because I'm concerned about not having the time together.
Thank you. Joe.
I was disappointed not to see facilities on there. It feels to me like particularly district offices are going to be a really critical issue on day one of the new council. And that discussion is really important, and that we ought to, make sure that it happens. I also thought the presentation we got from the facilities people last time was really, really valuable, not just for us, but to be on the public record. And I think that it would be really useful for them to have a forum to do regular updates like that. And I think taking that much time of the full committee would not be a good use of everybody's time. And so I'm imagining that if we had a subcommittee, they could do those presentations. It would be on the public record and available.
Thank you, Joe. All right. We've got Bill.
Oh, thank you. I noticed that the expectation is for each subcommittee to develop a charter. Charter strikes me as awfully formal. I think the scope is good, but maybe call it a work plan. I just identify charter with the charter for the restructure of the city council, or the city of Portland's charter. And it might be more rigid and less subject to change. Thank you.
Thank you. I am going to take this time to speak on behalf of Mani, who is on her way and running a little late, but did have feedback to offer, which was that one thing that would be useful to have in place before we set the charters or work plans for these subcommittees is an overarching work plan for GTAC that takes into account what was outlined in Mike Jordan's initial letter to us, along with what was sent to us by the mayor and council, which I think is a great addition to the proposal. And the idea with that would be that there could be a work group that would meet over the next couple of weeks to define that work plan. And then by the time we implement the subcommittees, that would be there so that we better understand our charge within them. So again, that's me speaking on behalf of Monty. Okay. Then I'm gonna quick take this opportunity to speak to some of the questions. Oh, Destiny, sorry.
So thank you, Leah,
Yeah.
and Monty's recommendation. If we're gonna do like the proposal and like work on a work plan with a work group, hoping like that the subcommittee charter and all that could be done offline potentially. That way we can still have our regularly scheduled GTAC meetings if, we decide, and I'm cautioning of limiting them. But so that we can have the forum for the staff to connect with us and the public.
Yeah.
And just to clarify, any work group or subcommittee with any number of people that we have is a public meeting. So it has to be announced, has to be staffed, has to be all the things. So I think that's part of the carrying back process, because if we add 3, like we have 2 on the table, we're talking about a work plan, work group, which would be shorter, but that'd be 3. So staffing all those and having 2 meetings a month is a lot.
And so I'd like to speak specifically to everyone's questions. With scaling back to once a month for our full committee meetings, it's up to us to decide, I believe, whether or not to do that. As Jose stated, the issue really is about the amount of time and resources we're taking up to do it. But like I said, it's up to us to decide what's the best way to work together as a committee. Amy, specifically to your points with it about limiting the space for public comment and staff presentations, any subcommittee meetings would be public meetings the exact same. And so people would actually have more opportunities to provide public comment, and staff would ideally have more opportunities to make presentations just in different forums. All of them would continue to be public record and available still. But again, it's up to us to decide like that frequency. Juliet, your question about there's no max, but is there a minimum? I don't believe so. Because again, since it's an official subcommittee, no matter how many people there are, it's going to be staffed. That said, I could be totally wrong, but I don't think we're going to run into an issue with not enough people being interested. And Joe, to your point about facilities, it's a great one. And I think this is my fault for not making it more obvious, but subcommittee 2 would be very focused on that. Since districts are a large part of it, facilities would be a part of the conversation. So we anticipate that being the primary forum for where facilities could come present robustly and hopefully often. Mani, I want to say I jumped in line because I wasn't sure when you were going to be able to make it. And so I suggested what we had chatted about in terms of pulling together a group of people to put together a work plan. But since you're here, I would like to pass it to you quickly instead of putting words in your mouth, if you would like to share.
Sure. Yeah. Hi, y'all. Sorry, I'm late. I was just thinking now that we've gotten the letter from the mayor and now we might be, you are already voted for the subcommittees. Has that already happened? No, we're just in that agenda item. If we move forward with the well, regardless which way we move forward with subcommittees or not, I think we should be creating a work plan for GTAC. And then I'm happy to volunteer to be a part of that working group. So this temporary time-bound group, just to create clear deliverables and general timelines that we can make. So that's our roadmap. And then that would help with future subcommittees if we go that route as well. So making a motion to create a work plan.
And I will say also about Amy's point about the presentations, having them spread out over different committees instead of just the big overall committee. We will still all get the agendas for all the subcommittees, even if you're not a part of it. At least that's my hope, that the subcommittee will be meeting on this day and this is the agenda. If you're not part of that subcommittee, but you see a presentation coming up that you wish to be a part of, no one's going to kick you out. That's still something you can attend. I think it might actually help get more engagement, not just because there will be more opportunities to do so, but because they'll be specific and people like to give comments about very specific topics we found. So I think they might help that way.
And Mani, I'll get back to your motion, but before that, I do want to hear what Juanita has to say. I see your hand up.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Just for clarification, my understanding was that as long as there is not a quorum of us, our meetings that are not considered public meetings. That's the first thing, because you're talking about having to have public input and all of that for the committee meetings. I thought that was more informal than that. Also regarding, I agree with the comment that the forming a charter is too much, that maybe we can just use Robert Rules of Order. And the last comment is regarding the presentations. And I think that just also for clarification, when we talk about committees was with intent, and listen, this is my personal opinion, okay? So that's my understanding. I want to make sure that I'm not speaking for the group. My understanding was that that was to give us the opportunity to really dig more deeply into the issues in each of those areas that we identified, that we are being given, provided information by the staff. So to me, when we're talking about also a work plan, I think that we need to be very clear about what is the intent of the subcommittee. To me, was to dig deeply and be able to articulate more specific questions, because we are being given too much information and it's impossible for all of us to really go in depth into each of those areas, because they're very complex areas and there's a tremendous amount of information. So for us to go dig into that, and then based on what we do, read or ask questions to the staff, whatever, then bring some specific recommendations or questions to the full committee to then present it to the transition committee. So that was my understanding. So I just want to make sure that I'm not totally off base here, because I'm hearing a much more formal structure for the subcommittees. So I think that's, and then also I think that the presentations in terms of the time for all the full committee meetings, I don't know if there's possible, because sometimes we receive all of the information ahead of time, and then we have a full at least in the beginning we have very lengthy presentations that took a lot of our time. We were basically just sitting down listening to the staff telling us about the information that we have received already. Is there a way that we may decide when we want to have a presentation? And I think specifically in those areas where the subcommittees are working, because we will be able to really dig into some of those areas that we think that we need to have more input.
Thank you, Anita. Yeah, all good points, and I'm going to speak to them as best I can. It is my understanding from Julia that regardless of if we have quorum or not, if it is an official subcommittee that we vote on, it's an official meeting, no matter if there are 3 of us there or 15 of us there. So it doesn't matter if we state it's an official body of this group. Second, noted regarding the formality of language. I think that's something that we can easily switch. Third to that, thinking about how this interplays with the larger group, I think that your read on it is precise in that you dig into it more into the smaller groups, and it would be shared back when relevant with the bigger group. And then in terms of the formality of coming up with a work plan and going through these motions with the subcommittee, the idea with that is not to add extra layers of formality that don't need to be there, but to provide clarity and structure so that we don't end up with 2 subcommittees that are accidentally doing the exact same work. So all of it's there so that we can hopefully dive in and do the best work. And then finally, to your question about presentations and the length, one thing that's kind of cool that I learned in the co-chair position is that we get to have a role in shaping the meetings. And so we can decide how long presentations will be. And so for the subcommittees, we can, have a role in deciding like how much we actually want to hear and how much space we want to have set aside for discussion. So thank you. Yeah, thank you. I'm going to move things along a little bit now, just recognizing that we have 10 minutes left of this conversation. So I'm going to try to provide a synopsis of what I've heard, where we're at right now. It sounds like in general, there's agreement about moving forward with these subcommittees. The main issue that people have brought up is whether or not we should meet once a month or scale back to meeting once a month. And then also I want to take into account the proposal to, if we do this, also have a work group that we would be convened soon to offer a draft work plan for the entire committee that would then inform what subcommittees do. So my proposal for how we move forward is that I don't think that we actually have the information that we need today to decide on whether or not we can scale back to one meeting or continue to have 2 per month with these other ones. It's my understanding that that's a staffing concern. June, can you speak to that at all?
Yeah, I can speak to that. So I think, just reflecting the conversation that there's a desire to keep the 2 GTAC meetings a month. But this proposal basically says that if we establish 2 subcommittees, we're going to scale back GTAC to monthly. And so I guess the question here is, what is the possibility of keeping both the 2 subcommittee meetings that would meet monthly, as well as keeping the 2 monthly GTAC meetings? And so I think the staffing concern that I will say is that staffing coordinating and scheduling those 3 meetings and being able to bring things that are up to date, as well as have that lead time between subcommittee meetings into the monthly GTAC meetings, to be able to have more of a meaningful conversation where that feedback loop is happening. 3 meetings a month of GTAC feels like the right amount with the amount of meetings happening. So, I mean, one thing that we could do is start there. And then if we really feel like we are really missing that time as GTAC, figure out, does that mean, kind of to Amy would have written in there, does that mean maybe we could just do a longer meeting, monthly meeting for GTAC? I think, that is sort of how I see the cadence of it, of being able to have, say, like the subcommittees are in week 1 and week 2. We have week 3 to kind of prep all of the documents, make sure everyone is informed of how these are working together, to then have that GTAC monthly meeting where we all come together. So that's kind of why I would see that, I am a part of that proposal of wanting to do 1 monthly GTAC meeting.
I think it seemed like we had all the time in the world a little bit ago, and it's kind of been, we're getting down there now. So I'm going to make a proposal and see how this lands with folks. That I propose we move forward as planned, saying that we're going to go down to 1 GTAC meeting per month, but that we revisit that in November once subcommittees are up and running to see if it's working or not. So to give it a try, and that we can always increase the number of meetings that we're having if it's not working, so that we move forward with the proposal as it's listed, with the amendment of changing charter to work plan for the committees. Then that we also make a note that we will revisit this in November to make sure that it's still working. Can I get a general show of thumbs again? How are you feeling about that proposal with the modification that we would check back in November? Okay. Great. I think I'm going to keep this short to 1 minute each, Terry and Amy. So 1 minute to share, and then we're going to move on to voting.
Yeah, I went from a thumbs up to a thumb sideways, mostly because I'm worried that a full GTAC does need to meet more frequency to give timely advice. And that's going to be the limiting problem. I wouldn't worry about it so much if we can pull off a special meeting as needed, which might be needed more frequently than we think. So, I mean, we've done it once and it was hard to do. My suggestion would be sort of the inverse, is schedule 2 GTACs and then eliminate 1 if we don't need it. Or have the second one be a special meeting as needed or something. That's my main concern.
Great. Thank you, Terry. Amy?
Yeah, I share the concern about frequency, given the timeliness of this stuff. And Typically, when things are repealed, they're not going to be reinstated. So we can go in with the best intentions to revisit this, but it's very unlikely, especially if there's limitations now, there's only going to be more limitations. And also, we are the singular body of citizens that's overseeing this transition. And we've seen over and over again, the city council, like different bodies, trying to erode the citizens' participation in this. So, well, I definitely respect the staff and like that, sorry, but being the singular body for citizens and the singular place that we are watching this happening, and we only have a certain amount of time to watch it happen. It seems a bit unfortunate, but I do like what Terry said, or agree maybe that we would propose that we keep it as maybe an only online meeting or some sort of thing, because if we lose the cadence now, we're not going to get it back. It's very unlikely, in my opinion.
Thank you. And I see 2 more hands up. We are running low on time, so I'm not going to take any more comments with this unless Zach or Destiny, like, do you feel like you have to offer it before we could vote?
I would
Zach?
like to.
Yeah, please bring it.
It's very brief, and it's affirming what Terry has shared about timeliness. When we have city council who opens up a public hearing, a public comment period of just 2 weeks on their organizational structure, it's evidence of the fact that we do need to have a regular cadence that's more frequent, so that we have an opportunity to potentially act on a more short time frame.
Okay. I think from what I'm hearing, and again, with the goal of gaining consensus, I'll flip what I said before, which is to say that we move forward with the same cadence of meetings that we've had of twice per month of GTAC and revisit that in November to see if that's working and if we feel comfortable limiting then. But at this point, we would not be limiting meetings at all for the full GTAC and be adding on subcommittee meetings as well. Okay. And with that, I'm going to move us towards a vote. Just to make sure that we're staying on time. First, I'm going to go through the proposal that's listed here with subcommittees, and then I'll go to Mani's proposal about a work group that would specifically be drafting a work plan for GTAC. So would anyone like to make a motion about the proposal for subcommittees that we, and again, what the proposal is that we move to these 2 subcommittees for voter and candidate education and outreach, and for districts and council operations, along with the operating procedures as outlined. The changes that have been made are that GTAC will not reduce its regular meetings at this time, and that we will be producing a work plan instead of a charter for each subcommittee. Would anyone like to make a motion?
I so move.
Thank you, Anita. Could I get a second?
Seconded.
Thank you, Zach. All in favor? Let's do thumbs. This will be easy. Yeah, let's do it. We don't have to do a roll call here.
Okay.
Excellent. Thank you, everyone. Okay, and so next, would you like to make the proposal, Mani, for the work group?
Sure. Just what I said earlier, making a motion to create a work plan for GTAC. So a working group to make a working plan. That's the motion.
Excellent. Jose seconds.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, Amy Wood also seconds. We got seconds everywhere. Amy Wood. Okay.
We have to vote on the deadline, the length of the time.
Yeah, actually, do you want to specify more about what timeline you're thinking for it?
Sooner than later, I think would make sense. When it's in the 11th meeting and should have a work plan. So I know Lee and I talked about trying to do it before the next meeting, but then the coordination and making it, working with staff to have it be a public meeting, and whoever wants to be on the working group. So June, if you think you could help with kind of seeing who wants to be on the working group, and we can coordinate calendars and all that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I think if folks want to volunteer now, then those are the folks that I can kind of.
Yeah, I'm going to have folks volunteer after the meeting and
after the
email us just for time's sake. But the goal would be to produce a plan before the next meeting on October 3rd. So it would be a limited time working group that people would volunteer for by emailing the co-chairs in June after this meeting. Does that sound accurate, Tani?
Yeah, and just, I know we've got to move on in recruiting folks since I volunteered myself. This doesn't have to be a lengthy document, just something on paper that can be iterative as well.
We are running over on time right now, so I'm going to move us to a vote on the work plan piece of it. And we have a motion and a second at this point with additional clarification for a timeline. So I'm going to call a vote of all in favor. Feel free to throw up your thumbs. Okay, we have all in favor except Zach. Zach, I want to give you, we are going to move forward with the work plan, but Zach, I want to make sure that you have a space to talk. So if you could keep it to 1 minute, if you just want to share where you're at with that, I think it's important to hear.
Yeah, sorry, I'm filling a lot of space today. It's an open question of how we might be able to utilize the first meetings of our subcommittees to accomplish some of these goals. And two, it's a somewhat self-serving reason why I don't want to have a work group on this, at least in a very time-sensitive way, because I would like, when we get to our next agenda item, to propose a working group that addresses having a joint statement about the public comment period and organizational structure.
That makes sense. Fortunately, we can have many work groups, but thank you, Zach. I appreciate you sharing with that. With that, thank you, everyone. I realize that was lengthy and it was a lot of decisions plugged into a short amount of time, but we're going to get a lot of information out to you. The next steps will be people following up about the subcommittees to get information about who is interested in joining which subcommittee so that we can begin scheduling out those meetings. And again, a reminder to please email co-chairs and June if you are interested in serving on the work group for creating the work plan. Since that's timely, please try to do that by tomorrow. And with that, that was all. I am going to hand things over
To June.
to June.
All right, y'all. Glad we're rolling here over to public comment. So it's now time to take verbal public comment. And as a reminder, community members were asked to sign up ahead of time on our website. And so we have one person signed up, Nancy. We'll be promoting you to panelists. So after the folks who signed up testify, we're going to ask anyone in attendance if they'd like to testify during the remaining time for this agenda item. And again, folks will have 3 minutes to provide testimony, and we will be keeping track of your time. So let's see, I'm going to promote you, Nancy. Yes, that work. Perfect. So Nancy, sorry, let me see. Nicole, you have the timer. All right, there is a visual, 3 minutes. All right, Nancy, you have the floor. Good to see you again.
Hi, thank you so much. Again, my name is Nancy Champlin and I'm the Executive Director at Southeast Uplift Neighborhood Coalition. And thank you so much for all of the work that you're doing and especially for being such steadfast advocates for civic engagement in Portland. This morning, Southeast Uplift, along with our partner nonprofit district coalition offices, Neighbors West Northwest, Central Northeast Neighbors, and Northeast Coalition of Neighborhoods, submitted a letter to the mayor, to Commissioner Ryan, Chief Administrator Jordan, and Civic Life Director Ratby, calling on them to do two things. One, to work with us to convene a community engagement forum where the public and our civic engagement stakeholders in the city's programs can learn about their rationale for why the civic engagement programs have been placed where they have in the city's new organizational chart. And two, We're calling on them to expand the public comment period from September 29th, which is next Friday, through October 31st, so that through that engagement event, folks can learn more about it and actually submit informed public comments. So tonight, I'm hoping to call upon GTAC to help us amplify that call to expand that public comment period. It would be very much appreciated, and thank you so much for considering that request.
Thank you so much, Nancy. All right, I want to open it up to other folks who are here if they would like to provide public comment. All right, I will take that as no. So thank you again, Nancy, for testifying. And I will turn it back to Jose and then move on to our next slide.
Thank you. Slides. There we go. Well, next slide, please. Great. Last week, the city released its August 2023 transition status update and community engagement status update. Both are available online on our tonight's page. Committee members were asked to review the status updates ahead of time. I hope you all get to do that. And I'll ask Shoshana to share her key takeaways from the transition status update, and June to share her key takeaways from the community engagement status update. And then we'll open it up for your feedback and any questions you may have.
Perfect. Thank you so much for having us and for the ongoing engagement. It's always a pleasure to be here with you. So my main takeaways, and I'm sure that you'll probably share them, is how much we've completed. So this is the August status update, and we're halfway through September. So thinking back to August, completed the Sophia Alvarez Castro on our team, completed the work with the Independent District Commission, Jamie Duhamel on our team, finished the work with the Salary Commission. Both of those were really important charter required projects, and I think will have a huge impact on our work going forward. So cheers and kudos to all of their great work and to the work of the commissions. So a lot of what my key takeaway is that the status update really is looking forward into a lot of the work that we've just delivered. So clearly you've heard from our facilities team last month, and that you'll see in the status update that we've noted that work is at risk. So as we are working to forward to finalize the scope and the schedule for that work, so that we can launch renovations for 2025. I expect that you will see more information about this in our next status update that gives us a little bit more perspective on where we are on the risk. And I'm really hoping that we're going to be able to drive to a decision about the overall scope of that work, and so that we can really nail down the schedule. So another look ahead is to our voter education work, which has recently been launched. In our next status update, you'll see a lot of information about that work. And I'm pleased to hear you're so engaged on that front. So that work will also be led by the intrepid Sophia Alvarez Castro, who is working with our county partners and community coalition partners to develop a plan for educating voters about our new elections method. So it feels like, we're in the third week of September. August seems so far away. Happy to answer any questions about it, but it really, when I was reviewing it for this meeting, it really seemed to just really prime us for so much of the work that we're doing this month. So happy to answer any questions after June is done with her work as well.
In terms of August, thank you for time traveling back with us to August. I just kind of wanted to point out that again, this community engagement status update is fairly new for us. So this is the second time we're sort of going through it. And I just wanted to point out that one of the first tables you'll see is engagement activities to date. And I hope that sort of highlights that it really takes a very multi-layered, multi-pronged approach to do engagement. So we'll see that it'll take public meetings, the communications and media coverage that's on there, numbers around, we're looking at additional signups to our monthly email, GTAC engagement, our engagement to kind of help push this information about the transition in our new form of government to lenders. So when you look into the August report, you'll see that it's a little bit quieter than previous months. We had 39 public comments, and they were really driven by a listening session on Code 3.02. Again, that is a code that aligns the city with the revised charter. And that first reading happened today at council at 2:00. And then we also still had a lot of comments about geographic districts. We also had several comments just about accessing information. You'll also see towards the end, we added key takeaways. There was a joint session between GTAC and the Independent District Commission, and they had some key takeaways that were highlighted during that meeting. And so we included those in there as a reminder for folks. And lastly, as we look forward, we look again to upcoming transition milestones, you'll see that on October 19th, the city org resolution goes to city council, and we'll have a brief update on that later. And so, so now we're opening it up to take committee member questions, comments, or advice about these updates.
Joe?
Yeah, and I think this probably addresses both of these. Our website says that we're the main public engagement body for the transition. And for a lot of people, a major part of this transition is what's happening to the Office of City Life. For 50 years, that's been the city's sort of primary community engagement mechanism. And it's being undone and divided into two new boxes that have never existed before. Because this is being done as part of the organizational structure element of the transition, there has really been no community engagement, and GTAC's been explicitly told that it's beyond our scope. And I want to sort of say two things about that. One is, for a lot of people, this is going to be a lightning rod, and it's going to complicate not only the transition, but our ability to do community engagement for the transition. So, on the one hand, Nancy asked us to take a position on a specific request, and I hope that we will make the time to do that. But in a much narrower sense, when we go to the community and do our presentations and our engagement, I don't think we're going to be able to tell people, yes, that's interesting, but we don't have anything to do with that. When we are the primary, public engagement body for the transition, we need to be able to address questions, to engage people about things that are important to them. And I think that it's really critical that we at least be informed, if not involved, about what's going on so that we can do our job and so that the transition can go ahead, effectively.
Thank you, Joe. Lori?
I had just a question about ranked choice voting. I noticed there that the federal and state certification process was going to initiate in Q3, and I just wondered if that did occur. Q3 would be up.
I just got the update today from the county, and I can't recall precisely what it says. So it'll absolutely be in our next report, and I can get more information on that.
And I had one other comment about the community engagement. And when you look at all the indicators, they look great. And in lots of cases, it looks like we're going to surpass our goals well before the end of the transition. And so I guess two comments. One, we might need to revisit the goals. The second one that I was concerned about is one that we all own, was the GTAC engagement. I don't know if we're underreporting But at this point, there should be more like 30 and there's only 6. So if we're underreporting or if there's a concern or something that we need to talk about, why we're so far behind.
Thank you, Lori. Juanita?
Yes, I just, we liked, when we met with the committee that did all of the geographic district, the districting of the city, we talked in length about community involvement, and the information that we got there was that from them is that they didn't feel there was enough community involvement. There were some neighborhoods that actually didn't participate at all. And so the conversation went to what do we think do we need to do, you know, because we have now as the GTAC committee the responsibility to do community engagement, but I think it's very difficult for committees like ours or like the other 2 committees that they just finished their work to try to do the community engagement if the city itself within its organizational structure doesn't have a systemic approach to community engagement, where an infrastructure is created and it's there and it is formal and it is proactive. So when committees like ours or like any other committee can then just plug into that system, into that structure. So because we're being asked to do, and I'm not saying that I don't want to do it or that I disagree with doing it. All I'm saying is that the city, and this is the great opportunity with this reorganization that is taking place to ensure that there is a single centralized system for community engagement who truly does the work that needs to take place. Because really, whatever we do as 15 people in this committee and whatever efforts we are making is never going to do the level of community engagement that we need to have for such a tremendous change that is taking place in the city. Thank you.
Thank you, Juanita. Terry?
Yeah, I just want to pipe up real quick to echo what Joe said about the difficulty in doing the community engagement work. In the last week, I did 2 community organizations, and both of them wanted to talk about the civic life stuff. And mostly that's all they wanted to talk about. And so it made it really difficult for me to wear a GTAC hat at those meetings. And I'm just going to fess up that I just took the GTAC hat off. If it's not in our scope, I'm free to talk about it. And so I'm talking about it. And answering questions as best I can, giving advice as best I can as myself. Whether that's right or wrong, that's the position we're in. And for those of you doing outreach into community groups, that's the hot topic right now. They all know about it and they're all concerned.
Yeah, I can understand that. Joe, you have comment?
Yeah, I just wanted to add one footnote, which is that it's not just neighborhood groups. That civic life, was renamed to reflect the fact that it also includes community-based organizations in underserved communities. If you look for that in the org chart, it says diverse civic leadership. And they've been part of civic life for a long time. And, full disclosure, I've been, in conversations with people, not only from neighborhoods, but also from DCL groups. And this is bigger than just, neighborhood disgruntlement.
June, did you want to talk to any of the engagement stuff?
Yeah, thank you for bringing up the pieces around engagement. I think Lori, to your point around, is it underreporting or what's up with the numbers around GTAC engagement? Something that I can do is sort of, resend out the outreach tractor, kind of look at it again and make sure that things are sort of on track. I will say that in September, y'all have been doing a lot of engagement. So I think it kind of just had that uptick and a little bit of a slow start as folks were gathering things. And so that will happen. And I also hear what you're saying, Juanita, about wanting to make sure that there is also, how is this contributing to a more sustained approach where it's not just us relying on GTAC, it's also kind of demonstrating that staff are also going out there. We are also trying to make this system of reaching out better. So this doesn't really, solely rely on you all. So I think as part of maybe this update, we can kind of, for the next time, kind of highlight those pieces a little bit more. And I think the piece around the civic life and the city org update, we're going to be doing a quick update then. And I think that would be a great time to sort of maybe, I think there might be a motion hiding under here somewhere from the group. So I'll leave that part to that section.
Sure, Shauna.
Thank you. So thanks so much for everybody's comments, and specifically to you, Joe, and Terry, to the comments that you mentioned. I think that there is some information that you can provide to the community when you're out in the community. Of course, this is a body where public comment is taken, and staff is here. We have our staff here. I know that there are folks that are watching online as well. And we're always very in tune with what is happening in these meetings. So we take your feedback and the public comments that you receive very seriously, and we get incorporated into our work. So this is one place where people can give feedback. Of course, you can always encourage folks to submit either a letter and copy Mike Jordan, and make sure we see all of those as well, and are compiling those as part of our public comment. So just so you know that work is happening and will be provided to council. There's also the listening session on the 27th, which is an important event for the information session on the 27th. It's an important event for the project. And there's a lot more information that is available. So, and of course, there is the hearing on the 19th, where the public comment and public testimony is absolutely part of our presentation. And so folks can sign up to give public comment at that council hearing. And then you have the audience of the council. So I understand it's unsatisfying, but I think that there are some places that you can tell folks to plug in. And as we staff are the ones that are seeing it, I can assure you we are seeing the traffic, and we see the public comments, and we make sure that those public comments get to decision makers.
And just to echo that, I did have it on my notes to mention that a little later, but Leah and I have gotten comments about the city org and things that are not in our purview. And even though they're not in our purview, it feels inappropriate to sit on those comments. So we are planning on compiling them, passing them on. So if you have any comments or anything you've received while out in the community, you can just email us, and we'll put them all together and send them on. So, Manny, you have something?
Lowered my hand. I know we're at time. I don't know if this is the space where we talk about it, or it's going to be in the subcommittees, but unpacking the qualitative pieces, the quantitative pieces don't mean much to me. It's nice to see numbers and what the goals are. The community engagement, we really need to hear the qualitative side of things. And so what we see in this document, what are we doing with it? We see the key takeaways, so what? That's what I'm left with when I read this, and maybe that's going to be taken up in our subcommittees, and just, echoing what Juanita said, it's a wider approach. So as our body, what are we doing with this? We're out in the community. That's great. I would love to hear from folks in here rather than reading it, like some highlights of what happened. I know pieces of that come in. But it'd be great to hear. And then are we able to talk as a body about, oh, I heard that too, and what should we do, and next steps with it, rather than it just being documented.
Yeah, and I'm glad
Checking the box.
I'm glad you said that, and you didn't just put your hand back down, because I completely agree with you. Seeing 39 comments and all that is great, but I really want to know the content. So I don't know if you guys are ready to share some of that now, or maybe for the next time you do a update, we could have some of that.
The 39 comments are the public comment that we got. There was not as much activity in the email and our surveys and the way that folks are reaching out to us. I will say that we will exceed that number in September because of all of the comments that we're getting from the city organization through our online comment portal, through the anonymous survey, and through our email. And then folks are directly sending emails to Michael Jordan are also getting forwarded to me at the transition inbox. You can always email us at transition@portlandoregon.gov. I'm Nicole. I'm the one who responds to those emails. I respond to every email that we get. And so there are various ways that the public comment reports are posted typically within a couple of days, or I try to as much as I can post within a couple of days. And you can find that on the transition website, all of the raw public comment data.
I just want to, Nicole not just responds to the public comment, she also shares that public comment with the team members who are working in those areas. A public comment report is also shared with our city council. So Nicole really is the hub for a lot of that information and does an incredible job of distilling that into themes that we can use on the project.
And I know we're sort of at time, but I just wanted to offer if, the status updates are meant to be able to provide y'all with some high level updates. And it sounds like sometimes like that we're still trying to figure out what kind of updates are working for you all. The public comment, every single comment that we have is linked as part of this report. And so if there's any issues accessing it or you have ideas of how this portion can serve you better, please email us. And we want to make this a productive space for you all to, if it is something that you'd like to do to prepare a little bit of discussion of the concerns that you're reading in the raw public comment, or maybe the summaries don't serve you well. I think those are things that we're definitely open to really making it so it works for you all.
Yeah, I'll make sure that when we talk about the next meeting, it's easy to look at numbers when they're on a page and leave it at that. We don't need them to be presented to us. So I agree with you. Maybe this time is better served with more qualitative things. So thank you. And I guess we can go back to the slides now. We're actually not too far off time. But now it's time to talk about the city organization. So I'll just turn it back to June, who's going to provide an update on city organization project and opportunities for public comments and the recent draft proposal.
Yeah, so I feel like you all actually covered most of my talking points, but I will briefly go over it. So again, the city organization project worked on developing an organizational structure for bureaus reporting to one city administrator. And so the team shared Chief Administrative Officer Jordan's draft organizational recommendation with employees on September 12th. And so, that recommendation reflected input from service area teams, community outcomes report, and some employee manager surveys. And this really is a representative, this is a document that is meant to be a cohesive and rational structure. And again, it is a draft recommendation that we are then taking in public input and then kind of handing it over to the council to consider. So in terms of our timeline for community input, we talked a little bit about this, but I want to be very clear about this is currently as it stands, the final recommendation from the Chief Administrative Officer is going to be submitted to council and published by the council clerk on October 13th, and it'll be heard during the October 19th city council hearing. And so right now we're collecting community input until September 30th, and you can either fill out an anonymous feedback form. You're welcome to join our virtual community information session on September 27th at 6 p.m. And also we wanted to highlight that we are having employee town halls. We had one yesterday and we're going to be having one tomorrow. So I am going to leave the update there and see if anyone has any questions on how to find this information or about this update. Right, I will call on Joe. Sorry, is that it? Yeah.
Yeah, so I want to follow up on the civic life thing and say really clearly, I don't want to necessarily take a position on this. I don't even want to articulate a position on this. I just want to say that on September 12th, a lot of people were presented with something that seriously impacts them and given 3 weeks essentially to respond to it in a 1-hour session that's going to address the whole organization. And this is one small piece of it. And till September 29th, to present written testimony. Nancy asked us to take a position and support lengthening that process. And I want to say again, this complicates our work for a lot of people. As Terry said, this is what the transition is about, because it's not about this abstract thing about how the city is changing. It's, what's going to happen to me, and here it is. And I think that from the standpoint of being the primary civic engagement arm of the transition, that giving this a little bit of breathing room and giving people an opportunity to address this when it doesn't feel pressured to them, when it doesn't feel stressful, will make the community engagement process better and will make our job and our work as sort of, fair agents much more effective. So I'd like, I don't know if it's in order to move that we do support that, that proposal of Nancy's, but I would like us to weigh in and say, in the interest of community engagement on the transition, it would be good to give people a little bit more time and a little bit more information.
So we have a motion on the floor. Before I call on Zach and Destiny, do you guys have something to say about this specific motion? Zach, is it on this motion?
I guess I'm not sure I followed that there was the motion. I was going to make a motion, so.
Well, we have a motion on the floor. Do we have a second? Second. Okay, we have a motion to back the comments from earlier to give people an extended period for public engagement, which we're not taking a stance on anything on civic life. It's just giving people more time to engage. Destiny, you said you had a comment on that?
Yeah, and it was just what you were reiterating on what Joe was saying, like we can get community sentiment and provide recommendations, even if we're not like recommending civic life. And so I think that's very fair. I mean, if you're sending these comments to the transition team, I don't understand why we couldn't take sentiments and put it in within our scope type of recommendations for the community sentiment.
Does anyone else have comments about this specific motion?
Jose, let me be explicit. If I understood, I don't know if Nancy's still out there, and if she is, she can say this. But what I think she said was extending the comment period to October 31st, which I understood is beyond when the council was going to consider this whole thing, and having a community forum to discuss this issue specifically, this change specifically.
Amy or Zach? Sorry, I'm skipping over you because you said you had something else.
I think Joe reflected it well. And I guess my question is operational. If we would need to, as a committee to reflect that, have some immediate working group to draft such a statement.
Yeah, yes, Zach, I believe that if we passed the motion to do this, we'd have to form a quick work group to draft a letter. Hopefully you shouldn't take more than one meeting. But I believe that's appropriate. Amy?
Yeah, I just had the same point of clarity. So the motion would be that we would draft and submit a letter to city council or to the transition team, or who exactly would we be advocating this?
So what I heard Nancy say, and I want to say I haven't talked to her, and I I heard exactly what everybody else did. But what I heard her say was that the neighborhood coalitions, or at least some of them, had drafted a letter. I think all we need to do is read their letter and either add our support or if we want to add anything else, we can. But I think it's pretty simple. We don't need to start with a blank slate.
I probably have that letter
You do?
in
Oh,
my email.
oh, good.
Juanita?
Yes, I was just, I think that, yeah, I'm a little bit concerned about forming a group to do a letter and all of that. I think all we can do anyway is recommend. It doesn't mean that they're going to agree with us. But I think that voting for a recommendation to the city council and to the mayor or to the city council, because they're the ones who will have to approve it, to give the additional time that the community is requesting, since it was just not only one group, it was a number of groups that got together and wrote this letter to them. So our recommendation could be that we, as the GTAC, our recommendation and is to support the letter that was submitted to the city council, and that we are in agreement with them that they need to have more time for community involvement. That's all we have to vote on, because we're not doing anything. I mean, really, that's just our opinion as a group and a recommendation, and then they can do whatever. But I think that we need to be responsive to the community. Nancy came representing a group of community organizations, and I think it's important that we respond to their request. And since all we can do is recommend, we should recommend if we're in agreement.
Thank you. Manny?
I just was, who's the target with this motion? Is it the council of the letter with this recommendation would go to?
I believe since the council's getting the final October 13th, they're the ones that should receive the letter, but also CAO Jordan would also, both of them, I think, would be appropriate to include them. June, do you know anyone else, or Shoshana, do you know anyone else that should be included if we voted on this?
I think that it just the transition, the transition website. So I'm sorry, email. So transition@portlandoregon.gov.
You would just send it there. You don't have to include
Bill?
Oh, thank you. Yeah, Juanita provided a segue that helped me to be able, if I were voting to support the motion, that the motion relates to community engagement. Yeah. If we got closer to make actual recommendations on city structure, I think that would, that would be inconsistent with the letter we got from the mayor. But here the motion's focusing on community engagement. So that's then, provides the connection that makes our comment relevant.
Thanks, Bill. Okay, seeing no more comments. Yes, and this is a recommendation to the city, so I believe for bylaws has to be a roll call, correct? Julie's not here. June?
It
is correct, right? You have to do roll call?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, so I'm gonna pull up the website so I can not miss anyone. Oh, we have the motion that Joe made on the floor, and
Just a point of clarity. So who will reach out to Nancy and let her know that you've done this?
I can do that. I've been in
Okay.
touch with Nancy.
all right, perfect. Okay, so on the motion on the floor, we'll call on Leah to vote.
Yes.
David is absent. Jane is absent. I vote yes. Manny? Manny, sorry,
Yes.
Manny. Lori?
Yes.
No?
Yes.
Juliet?
Yes.
Zach?
Yes.
Destiny?
Yes.
Abby?
Yes.
Thank you. Fred is absent. Amy R.
Yes.
Anita?
Yes.
Amy W?
Sorry, I thought you said Amy earlier. Yes.
And that is everyone.
Do you want to try?
I'll do my ladies vote then.
Oh, that Bobby. I thought I heard Bobby.
Thank you.
It sounded too close to Amy.
Okay, well, that everyone that's present voted yes, and that meets all the requirements, so the motion passes. So we just have to draft something. We don't, like when you said, we don't need a work group because it's a very simple letter, but it still has to be a letter. We can't just shout it at some, so if someone wants to put it together, who would put it together?
I'm happy to volunteer to do that with June, since we've got a meeting set up already. If
Great,
people are
thank
okay
you.
with that.
Thank you. Okay, well, and before we close off this section that we've been talking about, please don't forget, like I mentioned before, to send us any engagement and feedback you've received on city org or anything. And please, if you can, do it by next Tuesday, the 26th, because the listening session's on the 27th. So we'd like to be able to send it over to them before that listening session. So, and now I'll pass it over to Leah.
Excellent. Thank you. Let me just get on the right slide. Nicole, could you start the presentation sharing again? Great. At this point, we're going to shift gears and we're going to hear a briefing on change management and employee engagement, which is something that several committee members have asked for. And we're excited to have folks here who are able to tell us more. With that, Shoshana, I'm going to pass it back to you.
Sure. Thank you so much. So I'm just here to kick off this conversation and express to you how important supporting employees through change is for the team. It is a critical priority as we shift to implementing our new governance system. So we are partnering with Next Strategies to develop and implement a change management plan that focuses on the people side of the many changes that will occur as we transition to our new form of government under the mayor council structure. Our team is here to share our draft change management plan and to discuss our plans to support and engage employees in this next phase of our project. This project includes the changes in the relationships of employees to our leadership and of the leadership's relationship to each other, and to for our roles and responsibilities for our elected officials. It also includes how Portlanders will access their city government. So we are prioritizing and focusing on employees with strategic communications and regular town halls to help them understand what is changing and how it can impact their work. Soon, we will be launching opportunities for employees to build their skills and champion the changes all around us. So with that, I'll pass to Jennifer Chang to introduce herself and Autumn Carter from Next Strategies to introduce herself. Jennifer joined our team in June and has been laser focused on how to elevate equitable outcomes for our team and to help employees navigate the incredibly dynamic environment that we're in. Autumn has been a partner in developing strategies to engage our directors and provides tools for them to lead them through change. So with that, I'll just pass it to Jennifer. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Shoshana, and good evening, GTAC members. It's great to be here. It's my first meeting of GTAC, and I hope it'll be one of several where I'll have the opportunity to come share and also hear from you regarding just the various things that are going on with the transition. As Shoshana mentioned, my name is Jennifer Chang, she, her pronouns. I'm fairly new to the transition team, joining in June, and but however, I'm not new to the city. I've been with the city of Portland, formerly in the Housing Bureau, working on housing policy and homeless services coordination and systems work. And so I am just really pleased to be on this team and part of the work that is going on over these next couple of months and years as our city transitions and this once in a generation opportunity moving into a new form of government. Specifically around how we can be supporting employees, different teams, different bureaus throughout these significant changes. So I will be sharing a little more in depth around the summary of the plan after Autumn goes over a few of our high-level overview and some of the context and background work that has led us to that. So I'll pass it to Autumn.
Hi, my name is Autumn Carter. I am the managing partner for Next Strategies, a consulting firm that focuses on organizational development and change management being a part of organizational development. My business partner, Reed Wagner, who's also consulting on the project, is on the call, but I'll be presenting this evening. My background focuses on, has intersected with the public sector, the nonprofit sector, and the for-profit sectors. I'm really focusing on organizations aligning resources, but really aligning those resources to orient towards a specific outcome, an objective, a goal of success, especially when it comes to deepening and developing an organization. And really that comes down every single time to people, right? People make organizations. We establish processes, rules, but also informal norms all the time. We work together to achieve outcomes and goals, or we don't work effectively together. And that causes misalignment, which makes it difficult to achieve goals. And so just as we work and think about approaches, always when I look at a challenge, I'll be looking at what are the ways and approaches we can work and increase alignment. Where might there be challenges or hurdles, and what can we do to try to anticipate them, but also manage into them? So that's a lot of what we'll be covering today as an overview. So I'll start with providing an overview of the change management plan with the next slide. Thank you. So making change stick is the primary objective of behind coordinating a change management effort, especially as one that's as complex and dynamic as the one the city of Portland is facing. There are many moving pieces, and as a public sector organization, there are factors the city must account for. So that can include statutes and budget cycles, legal mandates, multi-layered decision-making processes. So at times, these all may make the process of transitioning to a new government seem technical, slow, distant, or otherwise less accessible for employees. But all 7,000 employees at the city of Portland are key to making this change stick. As such, this plan focuses on providing a roadmap to help the transition team coordinate and align its efforts and resources to support employees through the transition to form that new government. It focuses on specifically October 2023 through January 2025, but that really includes establishing a bridge to the next administration, anticipating their needs and really providing as smooth of a transition in terms of knowledge transfer and recommendations to ease that transition and to facilitate change management beyond January 2025. To the extent that some key decisions are still outstanding, the team can continue to build out the plan and use its elements as a framework for navigating dynamic processes over time. Next slide, please. So as background, this slide it provides a timeline to frame the work that the city has already undertaken to date, with the asterisk of there's October 2023, which has not occurred yet, but it's anticipated. So I'll provide a high-level overview. So voters passed Measure 2026 to 28 in November, and that set in motion planning efforts at the city. The mayor reassigned bureaus by function into service areas in January 2023, and the council passed Resolution 37609 in February 2023. That provided the transition team with some key direction that was essential for guiding the planning process going forward. The resolution also tasked CAO Jordan with leading the transition and ultimately recommending an organizational structure to the council this fall. So that's So he's in the process of doing that, and the council is deliberating and will have a final decision. So also consistent with that resolution, bureau directors formed the executive leadership team, or the ELT for short, and that really that structure helped to formalize many of their meetings that had been ongoing, but really helped to provide structure for planning and implementation support in the intervening months. And then over the last 6 months, since the spring, the ELT, deputy directors, council offices, and subject matter experts at the Bureau have convened within their service areas to undertake a programmatic assessment that has helped identify where the organization might benefit from restructuring and other future improvements. And then those assessments, along with other ongoing work that included best practice research, peer city consultations, meetings with employees through town halls and other communication channels, employee survey results, and discussions with city offices, provided input, especially from subject matter expert employee groups, that helped to inform the CAO's recommendations this September. Next slide, please. So I'm going to provide a background of the Cotter method, or the Cotter change model here, but it's helpful to know that the transition leadership team collectively chose to use the Cotter method to structure its planning for organizational change. Like all models, Cotter does not address every single scenario in the same way, but it's particularly effective for helping organizations effectively plan, implement, and sustain broad and/or complex change using a straightforward roadmap. It emphasizes the importance of using strategies such as creating a sense of urgency, aligning leadership, articulating a clear vision for change, building a coalition to support implementation, and enabling action to remove barriers. So that's really why it was chosen. And though the elements on the screen here are presented linearly when we talk about this model, organizations in practice will find themselves revisiting and addressing the steps in tandem over time, as they really serve as principles that help to guide and form the foundation for change. So in practice, you can typically group them as we have here into 3 phases, if you will. Phase 1 would be preparing for change, 2, implementing it, and 3, sustaining change. And those individual steps are as follows. So you want to start by creating a sense of urgency and purpose. You want to build a guiding coalition that can help align to that purpose. And that coalition should help to support the formation of a strategic vision, essentially creating an understanding of the roadmap of where the organization needs to go. Volunteers throughout the organization can be enlisted to help bring that vision to fruition. They also provide knowledge from throughout the organization to help anticipate potential barriers or needs and align resources throughout the organization. They can also be helpful for the next step, which is really enabling action by removing those barriers, right? Change, especially large-scale change efforts tend to fail when they break down because of inertia, or they hit just points to slow down the momentum and you get stuck, and then energy is lost. So generating short-term wins can also help mitigate that to keep energy moving forward and sustain the acceleration, which really involves helping to embed the norms, using training, and really helping the change stick. And then finally, adopting those norms going forward by instituting the change. So from here, I'll pass it on to Jennifer to close us out.
Adam. Yes, next slide, please. So the city's workforce is the most valuable part of our government. It's the people that are providing the services, creating the policies, implementing the practices and programs that support our Portland communities and residents. And so throughout this transition period, we really want to ensure that employees, the staff, are supported in knowing what changes are occurring, and that they have access to the information and the resources that they need to understand what is occurring, and also their role in the new kind of the shift and to the new organization. So that is really why we want and need a longer-term change management plan. And it begins by acknowledging that there are a variety of types of changes that people will experience. And we've listed 4 of some of the main ones here: change in management in terms of who a person may be reporting to, or the program that they work for; a workflow change. So there might be a change in a type of system or process that people are used to working on that now needs to change. There may be environmental changes to physical, for example, physical office space, your cubicle or desk space and where you report to work. And then finally, a culture change, which is how a person relates to their role, their team, or their department. So it could be, a shift or move in the location of that program or team into another area. So those are some of the main ones, but we also recognize that in addition to these, there are several other types of changes that can also be occurring, and people will be experiencing them. And with each individual, they'll have a different response and reaction, right, based on their lived experience and their just unique perspective towards how they interact and manage through change. Next slide, please. So our proposed change management plan, it provides some key objectives that we want to accomplish throughout this transition in supporting employees. We'll start with the objectives and then move on to our core approach. So our 4 main objectives are to raise awareness of the upcoming changes, again, helping people to understand what those changes are before they occur and are implemented, and then their place in and/or role within it. To provide support to employees throughout this process. Sometimes that might be just providing the information of what is the actual change. In other situations, it will be more than that. It will be providing the resource or maybe some technical information on how they may be actually part of the change. Third, just developing an organizational culture. We talk a lot about this on our transition team and also in coordination with a lot of staff teams, that this transition, this change offers a really great opportunity for us to re-examine and also begin incorporating and modeling opportunities for us to both build, expand upon, and set organizational culture that is aligned to the city's core values. And then finally, we want to maintain continuity of service. And by that, it's just like acknowledging that amidst this change, the city is still operating, right? Our bureaus and programs are still running and they're serving our communities and residents. And so we want to support employees and teams with information and training and skills that they need so that they can continue to provide those important services to Portlanders. Next slide, please. So our approach is also consists of 4 main areas. One is just committing to and consistently providing clear and effective communication. Using opportunities to engage with employees to build trust, and mainly so that they can see their value in the organization, their value for the work and contributions that they bring to the city. We also want to develop institutional knowledge and skills and be able to transfer that throughout this transition so that it gets embedded and built into the organization longer term. And then finally, embracing progress and opportunities for continuous improvement. We are trying a lot of new things throughout this transition, and we will need to make course corrections amidst the way. So just acknowledging that at the beginning and also practicing that as just a way to function and grow. Next slide. Excuse me. Finally, just some highlights for employee engagement. We We want to utilize existing networks and resources at the city and to partner with them to get out information and also provide support. We also would like to offer new opportunities for change management, training, and skill building throughout this transition. And then would like to ensure that we're staying closely coordinated and aligned with other teams that are part of implementing different of the various aspects of the transition change to make sure that things are coordinated and aligned. So those are some of our key priorities. And I think with the next slide, we have a few questions that we've proposed and would also welcome this time for any questions you have about our draft plan or other thoughts that are on your mind. I'll pass it to Leah.
Thank you so much for the presentation. At this point, if people do have any questions, comments, or feedback like they'd like to provide, please raise your hand. As you can see, we don't have a ton of time left today. So what I'm going to do is have everyone state their question, try to stay succinctly under a minute or so. If we have multiples, that is. And if there's enough time, perhaps the team can answer some questions. If not, we'll collect all of the questions and make sure that answers do get emailed out to people. One other thing I will add is that for people who are especially interested in this, there can be an opportunity to review the final change management plan with the team. So for folks that really want to dive in, don't worry, there's time. But without further ado, I'm going to call on people now. Juanita, I see your hand up first.
Yes, most of the strategies that included in the plan are very good and, respond to the taking care of the staff. However, I have a question. For example, in developing organizational culture, we know, and whenever you go through this changes in any organization, I think it's really important that the employees understand the reasons for the change. And I guess my question is, throughout the process, if it hasn't happened yet, is it going to happen? I know that we said, well, the changes are taking place because this change, the voters of Portland voted for these changes. However, I think it's really important that the staff, the whole city staff, understands that the reason it was voted is because many of the services that the city is supposed to be providing are not being provided efficiently and effectively. So for everybody to understand that is the basic reason for the change, I think it's very critical for people to be very clear that, yes, so they can, what is the goal? Well, is to improve services to the taxpayers. And so when we talk about organizational culture, it is centered on city's core values. But these city core values are wonderful in terms that include anti-racism, equity, transparency, communication, collaboration, and fiscal responsibility. However, it doesn't speak to personal responsibility or accountability to the mission of the city. What is the mission of the city management team, the city, management team?
Thank you, Juanita. I'm gonna ask that you finish up this thought, and then we're gonna move on to Bill so that
yes, I think I will put it in writing, and I will send it to you in June because I have several comments about that.
Yeah, okay. I appreciate that. Thank you, Juanita.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Leah. Two questions. One, or comment, I see a parallel between change management within the city and change management for community engagement. The community is going to have to undergo change too. So query, as you're working on plans or you develop, some tools, especially if there are some analogies that would be helpful for our committee, please share or think of that and highlight what you think would be appropriate. Second question, and this might be primarily for Autumn in Next Strategies. Is there an example from Next Strategies past work that might carry over or would have shall we say material relevance for the change that we're engaging with that the city is pursuing now? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Destiny?
Like if we're talking about like employee wellness, like some of the issues they highlighted was there's problems with efficiencies and redundancies, collaboration, communication. The structure is wrong, the leadership's wrong, decision-making isn't clear. And I feel like this is, going into Juanita, and I believe it was Bill's comment of like, we're getting, community feedback. What is the collaboration gonna look like? And culture building, knowing that we're not being redundant. We are providing services, we are doing that. And I don't think it's a good way to just look at it as a top down, but a bottom up as well of how they think it's best. Because I don't see a lot of comments, but I do see the charts.
Thank you, Destiny. Joe?
Just two really quick things. This is really big stuff and, really meaty stuff. And Leah, you said that there would be opportunities for people who want to engage to do that. I'd appreciate knowing a little bit more about what those opportunities are going to look like. And then Bill really triggered for me something that has come up in our work again and again and again, is part of this change management project about the city's approach to community engagement, so that at the end of this, there really is a coordinated and authentic interest in community engagement on the part of the city that results in consistent long-term partnerships with community-based organizations and people.
Thank you, Joe. We have just 3 minutes left for this. Juanita, I see your hand still up. Do you have?
No.
Okay.
Sorry, I forgot. No, I'm going
it's fine.
to send it to you in writing. I think it
Okay.
would make more sense.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I will take the opportunity now to clarify Joe's question about how people can continue to engage on this. If you're interested, simply email me and Jose plus June and Julia, a whole big group of us for right now while Julia's out of town, and say that you're interested. And Julia and June can work together to make sure that you're able to meet with folks and continue on with the plan. I can't say anything more precise than that right now, other than people want to talk to you and hear what you have to say. So just email us and we'll figure it out. That said, we do just have a couple minutes. So Jennifer, I don't know if you have one thing you want to make sure that you respond to before signing off.
No, I've been jotting down notes, and I know June has two very helpful and excellent points to incorporate and reflect back on. Thank you.
Excellent. This is weird. We're ahead of schedule. So please do continue to send in questions if you have them. And again, let us know if you would like to be put in touch with the change management people, and we'll set up a meeting. One more reminder before I hand things over to Jose of the work group. Oh, sorry, this is hard. The work plan work group. If you would like to be a part of that, a reminder to please email me and Jose plus June and Julia as well. I've already received emails from Mabi and Mani for it. So please get in touch if you can by tomorrow to say if you'd be interested. So since we're moving at a quick clip. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to you, Jose.
Just the typical closing for me. The recording of this meeting will be posted on the committee's website. There's a city organization virtual information center session on Wednesday, September 27th, which I think we've mentioned 27 times this meeting. So I hope you guys remember, but do send us any feedback that you want us to pass on before that session on Tuesday, the 26th. Our next committee meeting is Tuesday, October 3rd. Agenda items include election methods and voter education. So please send any questions about those topics by September 26th to help staff prepare for the most responsive presentation for you. Next slide, please.
We have a question from Zach.
Oh, we have a question. Zach?
Not a question. I just wanted to acknowledge that the reworking and incorporation of timers and the ways that we're working to improve facilitation and more voice in discussion. I think my personal experience has been successful. So I would like to see that continued. And I just want to, acknowledge that Nicole is juggling a lot of new things. And I also think that June, you might have been part of that as well, to incorporate into having this streamed on YouTube. So all just wonderful, exceptional work. And I just want to call that out.
Thank you, Zach,
Thanks,
and
Zach.
thank you, Nicole,
Yeah.
so much.
Destiny?
Coming off of Zach, I think once we're moving into the subcommittees, I really think that the chair should not be in Azalea because this is a lot of work we're doing. And, the transition team. And so I think we should start thinking about that mindset of like, some people should probably take up that rank because, 4 meetings is a lot to ask of you both. And you're doing great.
Probably will not be doing that.
Yeah. Just putting it out there. Probably not.
Thank you. And I do appreciate it. I think most people kept all their comments to the time allotted, because I even had this where I was going to start putting this up and reading it if people went too far over. And I didn't even have to use it.
Little
So,
lipstick.
it was great. Next slide, please.
Wondering about that.
What do you say? It looks like lipstick.
It is lipstick, yeah. What was red that we could find?
So this is the proposed upcoming meeting schedule. They're all on the transition website. You can see there's a little asterisk. There's been some movement, so take a look at that. But with that, we are adjourned. Thank you. 4 minutes is